Hi, I'm John Underhill, and thanks for joining me. This is another video for the Bandit series, exclusively by exoticblanks.com. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to complete the pen in the previous video with a custom snakeskin finial. So let's get started. Okay, so here's what we have so far. We have the custom center band on the Black Ash Burl pen. We have the Bandit cap. And we're going to remove this top finial, the stock finial, and we're going to replace it with snakeskin to dress this pen up. So how we would do that, take a scrap piece of wood, and I drill a 12.5 hole, maybe a 1/2 inch deep. This is the same drill bit that you use to drill out your upper tube on the Bandit pen, same as a Junior Gent. And because this is tapered, it will set in there without hitting the bottom. Now, as you can see, this is kind of a rivet type design, so it's held in there by them compressing the rivet just enough to hold that piece in. So all we're going to do is take a center punch and a hammer. We're going to place it over the top of that rivet. We're going to strike it. As you can see, well, there we go. As you can see, your piece is out. So, because this is stainless steel, the wood doesn't mar it. It's soft enough that it will hold up on any of the finishes on the other pen sets as well. But the Bandit is great because it's stainless steel, and this wood is not going to leave any marks on there, and it's going to remove that custom finial, or stock finial, and it's going to allow us now to build up on that. So what we're going to do, in the other video with the color cast and the wood, I actually turned a new piece and recessed into this. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use this stock finial. We're going to take it to the belt sander and we're going to sand down, we're going to sand it flat, just so that when it rests in here, it's below the ridge around the outer edge here. And it's going to give us enough room to secure the snakeskin to it and then build a thin CA layer over the top. Alright, so I'm going to use a belt sander for this. What I'm using, a pair of pliers, and I'm holding this flat against the base of the pliers. Now, I only want to take down about half that thickness. So, you may have to spin this a few times in your pliers to try to get it evenly, but basically what we want to do is we want to take the point out of this and flatten this all down. This way it'll give us an easier surface to work with. You could use a grinder if you want, but I think it'd be a little more challenging to hold this to a grinder wheel. So we're going to use the belt sander. All right, there we have it. Nice flat surface. It's fairly thin, and now that gives us something to work on. You also have to remember, by sanding this off, it's going to get hot, so you're not going to want to touch it for a while. Set it down on a safe surface, piece of wood or something. Don't set it on anything plastic, it'll melt through it. It is going to be hot. You could also dip it in some water if you want, but we're just going to let it air cool, and then we're going to work from there. Okay, so now we've got it all sanded down, and it's nice and flat, and it's thin. So now what we may have to do, take a flat file and lay it on the side here and work your way around this several times until you get the burr from it being compressed to fit in here, because when it was initially made, it was smushed in there to hold it in place. So what we want is, we want it to be able to push in there by its finger and hold. Once we removed enough of the burr, it'll push in there, and we can see if we have enough depth to put our snakeskin over the top of it and build the thin layer. Okay, so now comes the fun part. What we're going to do is we're going to put the snakeskin on the metal so that we can build up a finish after we put it inside of here. Now, in this case, this skin is dark, so I'm not concerned about the metal shining through. If I were going to be using, say, origami paper or something lighter, then I might want to spray paint that white so that my color isn't drowned out by the darkness of the metal. But in this case, I think we're fine. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to use this small end here, right? I like the tightness of the pattern here. I can get a little bit of everything going on. So we're going to turn that over. We're going to make sure that that's clean. I'm going to take a clean razor blade, and I'm going to scrape over this a little bit. I'm going to remove any debris that might be on there. All right. Now what I'm going to do is spray the skin with some activator, and I'm using Glue Boost. So now I'm going to put a little bit of glue on here. Here's a tricky part, being able to put that on there without gluing your fingers to it or making a huge mess. So we're just going to turn this over, kind of rotate it a little bit, push it down where we want, give it some activator spray, and now we have our finial glued to our snakeskin. We're going to make sure, we're going to give that a little bit, maybe 15 minutes to set up, and then I'm just going to cut around the edge of this. I can either use a razor blade or a pair of scissors. It all depends on what you're comfortable with, but we just want to make sure that the snakeskin stays to the metal. So we don't want to get too aggressive with it. Get this nice and round and down to clean metal so we know it fits in there the way it's supposed to. As you can see, we still have a nice shelf. We're below the rim of this finial cap, so we know we have enough room to build a clear finish over the top of that. Alright, now that we know we've got everything trimmed down to size and it fits just how we want it, what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of two-part epoxy. It doesn't matter what brand you use. I like to use the two-part epoxy instead of CA because CA can get a little brittle and it can break. It's not as flexible as a bond you'll get with two-part epoxy. So we're going to take this with a toothpick, nothing too big, and we're just going to come in here and we're going to dab it around the plate near that hole. That way any excess will go in the hole and not up the side and get on our snakeskin. So now I'm just going to simply place that over the top and push it down. Make sure it's in there all the way, and I'm going to let that sit and dry now. Two-part epoxy, it sets in 5 minutes, but it usually says, let cure for, I think, 24 hours. So I'm going to let that sit for a while, and then we'll start to build up our finish. Okay, now that that's set up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the ultra thin fill and finish, and I'm going to put just a light layer on top and kind of move it around so that it gets in all the crevices of the skin. I want it to get around the scales, and I'm going to give it a light mist. I'm going to go crazy with that. Now after I let the ultra thin soak in, I'm going to use the orange label, the thin, and I'm just going to build some light layers. I don't want to build it too thick because I don't want to trap air in there. So it's important to just put light layers. So we're going to do that. Just put a little bit up there, swirl it around a little bit. Hit it with some glue dry. We're going to let that set up. If we were to use the blue and build this up too quick, what's going to happen is we're going to trap air bubbles in there. And all I want to do is slowly build layers. It's not going to take much because we're filling a thin area anyhow, but we're going to make sure that we let each layer dry before we build more onto it. Once we get all the layers built up where we want it, we're going to let that sit and cure. I usually let it sit for an hour or two, and then I'll take it to the lathe and we'll cut the top of that off, shave it off, basically turn it down a little bit just to smooth everything out, and then we'll micro mesh sand it and polish it. Okay, here's what I've done. I've taken a push rod from my punch set. I've wrapped a little bit of tape around the end of it, so that way it's kind of a jam chuck. It's on there tight enough that I can turn it, but it's not too tight that I can't pull it back off. So we're going to do very light turning. All I want to do is turn this flat so that way I can sand it down lightly with some micro mesh, make it look all shiny and pretty. I removed any excess glue that's around the front, and I was real careful not to get glue around the edge. While gluing that in, if I would have gotten some glue on there, all I have to do is scratch over it with my nail. It would come off, and then when I polish this, I'd be able to polish this up as well. So that feels pretty good. We're going to micro mesh this now and wet sand it to shine that all up. All right, now I'm going to use a soft cloth and some Yorkshire grit extra fine, which is the white canister. We're going to turn the lathe up a little higher, and we're going to polish this out. I just finished all 9 grits of micro mesh. Now, simply pop that off, and we have our finial with our snake skin encased inside the CA. Now we'll take it back to the pen press and assemble it. Well, that's another easy way of customizing our Bandit pen sets, right? Real simple. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out the other videos here at Exotic Blanks on how you can customize your Bandit pens. Thanks for joining. I'm John Underhill.